Come with me and find out what secrets lie within the historic streets of Nassau, Bahamas. Today, we'll uncover the top places that you must see in this enchanting capital city. From hundreds of years old cathedrals and churches to colonial courthouses, rum distilleries, old mansions, fortresses, and even a queen's staircase, join me on a historic journey through time as we explore Nassau's rich history and vibrant past. Welcome to Nassau, the heart and capital of the Bahamas. Nassau was established as Charlestown in 1670 by British colonists due to its strategic location on New Providence Island, which offered a natural harbor and proximity to key shipping routes in the Atlantic. Before its establishment by the British, the island was sparsely populated by the indigenous Lucayan people. Following the arrival of Europeans, the native population suffered greatly due to disease and enslavement, leading to their near extinction by the early 16th century. The early settlement of Charlestown served as a focal point for British colonial expansion in the Caribbean, playing a significant role in the transatlantic trade networks. The town was renamed Nassau in 1695 to honor King William III of England, who hailed from the House of Nassau. Before it became a pirate haven in the early 18th century, Nassau was primarily a small trading post. However, its deep harbor and relative isolation made it an attractive base for pirates, leading to a period of lawlessness that significantly impacted its development. Nassau's pirate era had global ramifications as it disrupted international shipping and prompted the British government to take decisive action. In 1718, the appointment of Woodes Rogers as the first royal governor marked the beginning of efforts to restore order and assert British control. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, Nassau grew into a thriving center of commerce and tourism, reflecting the broader economic and cultural development of the Bahamas. Its historical trajectory from indigenous settlement, colonial outpost, pirate haven, and modern capital encapsulates significant themes in world history, including colonization, trade, and globalization. Today, Nassau remains a vibrant city that showcases its diverse historical influences. Beautiful Anglican Cathedral. Christ Church Anglican Cathedral, a beautiful Gothic-style church, stands as a beacon of Nassau's religious heritage. Established in 1670, it is the oldest church in the Bahamas and has been a site of worship for over 3 centuries. The cathedral's stunning stained glass windows inside and intricate wooden pews reflect its rich history and architectural grandeur. Bay Street, Nassau's bustling commercial hub, is lined with vibrant shops, cafes, and historical buildings. It's a perfect place to experience the local culture, shop for souvenirs, and enjoy the lively atmosphere. Princess Margaret Hospital, named after the British princess, is the largest public hospital in the Bahamas. It's located on Shirley Street, and it's served the community since 1952 and is a key healthcare institution. So my first impressions of downtown Bahamas, it's actually more quiet and peaceful than I thought it would be. With the cruise ships that come in, I saw a couple of them out there. I thought it would be more crowded. Didn't really seem that bad. There's that strip kind of along the waterfront, and it's like, yeah, it's total tourist trappy, It's like where they want to sell you diamonds and stuff that you don't need or add any value to your life. But there's a lot of cool little museums. Gonna check some more of them out. It's not incredibly walkable, but it's not the worst either. I mean, there's a sidewalk where I am right now. It gets kind of thin, and then it'll be, missing a bunch of pieces and holes and stuff. But it's not as bad as some of the reviewers said online. They were like, no, you can't walk anywhere because there's no sidewalks. I would say it's kind of in the middle. There's a few sidewalks. So, yeah. I got driven into town by my amazing Airbnb host, Brian and Lothario, by the way. If you stay here, they're like literally the best hosts in the Bahamas. Like, I've never had a host that good, to be honest. Just like literally will help you figure out anything. It's like the best of the best Airbnb wise. And the place itself's really nice and comfortable too. Good sheets, bedding, like all kind of stuff that you get nervous about when coming to a foreign country, but no need to be with them. So anyway, I am now kind of walking. I'm on Shirley Street, which isn't a main street, but it's kind of a significant street through the historic area. It's a lot of really pretty buildings, actually. I'm going to get a better view of them. As you walk down Shirley Street, you'll encounter a mix of historical and modern buildings, reflecting Nassau's evolving landscape. The Zion Baptist Church, located at the corner of East and Shirley Streets, is one of the oldest Baptist congregations in Nassau. It was established in the 1830s. It's played a significant role in the spiritual and social life of the community. Originally built as a jail in 1797, the Nassau Public Library is now a charming public library building. Its octagonal structure and historic interior offer a unique glimpse into Nassau's past. It's a peaceful place to learn about the local history and enjoy a quiet moment. The Magna Carta Court, constructed around 1780, is a notable example of Bahamian colonial architecture. It's made from local limestone and wood, and it's a simple hip roof and flat arched windows that are designed to withstand the island's harsh weather. The bright red shutters add a striking contrast to the white limestone. Magna Carta Court earned its name due to its historical significance and its architectural prominence in Nassau. The name likely pays homage to the Magna Carta, the historic English document that established principles of justice and rule of law, reflecting the building's original purpose as a center of legal proceedings. Located at 28 Parliament Street, the Della Plain House is a beautifully preserved example of Nassau's colonial architecture. Its historical significance and architectural charm make it a must-see for history enthusiasts. The Garden of Remembrance is a tranquil space dedicated to honoring the Bahamian soldiers who served in World War I and World War II. It's a poignant place for everyone to reflect on the sacrifices made for freedom and peace. Housed in a salmon-hued, white-columned Neo-Georgian building from 1921, the Supreme Court of the Bahamas stands as a symbol of justice and governance. The Trinity Methodist Church, with its beautiful architecture and rich history, is located on Frederick Street. It's been a cornerstone of the Methodist community in Nassau since the 19th century. A beautiful stairway leads you to Gregory's Arch, a significant landmark that marks the division between downtown Nassau and the rest of the island. It also offers stunning views and a sense of the city's historical layout. Gregory's Arch, constructed in 1852, is named after Governor John Gregory, who served from 1849 to 1854. While Gregory's Arch did not explicitly divide slaves from their masters or segregate white from black, it did symbolize a division between the affluent areas of Nassau, where the British colonial elite resided, and the neighborhoods predominantly inhabited by freed slaves and the working class. Grantstown, on the other side of the arch, was established in the early 19th century as a settlement for emancipated slaves. Today, Gregory's Arch stands as a reminder of Nassau's complex social history and the transformations that have taken place since the colonial era. It offers visitors a glimpse into the past and a connection to the city's evolving cultural landscape. The Government House, the stately residence of the British Governor-General, features a 1930s neoclassical facade painted in pink and white. It's an iconic symbol of Nassau's colonial past and present governance. The Grey Cliff Hotel is a luxurious accommodation option in Nassau, offering rooms ranging from $400 to $450 per night. This historic mansion-turned-hotel is renowned for its elegance, charm, and celebrity appeal. In 1726, the pirate captain Graysmith was given an ultimatum by Woodes Rogers, the new British representative. He would have to give up his pirating ways or die. So he did, and he started the construction of what is now the Grey Cliff Hotel as a mansion. It features Georgian colonial architecture, and it's mostly made of local limestone and hardwoods. Its features very much go with the Bahamas. It has wraparound balconies with louvered shutters and latticed trellises, so you get that cross-island breeze, which helps keep the place cool and also helps it withstand hurricanes. In the 1860s, it served as living quarters for American Confederate soldiers and blockade runners. They were trading their cotton for British guns and guns from other countries. In the 1920s, it was a speakeasy during American Prohibition. It was regularly visited by the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, who enjoyed visiting their friends who were, in fact, the owners of it at the time. It's hosted tons of royalties and a long list of celebrities in its illustrious career. The list is way too long to mention here, but it includes the likes of Pavarotti, the Bee Gees, Brooke Shields, Sean Connery, Eddie Murphy, Jay-Z, and even Margaret Thatcher. The Heritage Museum of the Bahamas offers an in-depth look into the island's rich history, from the Lucayan Indians to the modern era. It's a treasure trove of artifacts and exhibits that tell the story of the Bahamas. The air conditioning was not working when I went there, and there were no guided tours. But if you take the time to read the inscriptions, you find some interesting historical pieces. It starts out by talking about the voyages of Christopher Columbus. After all, the very first place that Christopher Columbus ever landed in the New World was in the Bahamas. It talks about all the places that he would have seen and named. You can see historical artifacts that are very interesting, like this continental sword. It's from around 1485 to 1500, and it would have been the same kind of sword that the nobility or officers at the time of Columbus's expedition would have had. So it's very likely that Columbus and the people on his ships, when they first showed up in the Bahamas, would have had swords like this. Now keep in mind, Columbus did land in the Bahamas and did visit a few of the islands, but he never came to Nassau. You also find really interesting pieces like this wood and button from Preacher's Cove. So actually the very first time that the Bahamas was settled by Europeans, specifically the British, was in 1647 when William Sales, the former governor of Bermuda, landed on the island of Eleuthera with 12 families, and they were Puritans. So they were really the first English founders of the Bahamas, and they had to take shelter in a cave because there was a storm, and there are very few relics that were ever found. But this wood and this button was found from that original cave. So imagine finding these artifacts from 1647, the first British people ever in the Bahamas as settlers. There's a lot of interesting pieces inside the museum. The best ones are the ones that have the labels in English, such as this English-made oak gentleman's writing bureau. It's from 1780 and it has secret internal compartments, of course. Another interesting piece is a contract for the hire of a boy slave from 1829. And it's in the original handwriting. It just shows the evidence of the history of slavery in the colonies. And it reads, "On or before the 25th day of December, next I promise to pay Elizabeth Burns $80 for the hire of a Negro boy David, and I do bind myself to clothe him in the following manner: 2 shirts and 2 pair of pantaloons for the summer, 1 skintle James coat, 2 pair of James pantaloons, 2 pair socks, and 1 pair of shoes for winter, also 1 wool hat, as witness my hand and seal this 18th day of January, 1829, by Richard Green." Fascinating. You also see things like this shackle that was a waist restraint made from wrought iron, and it comes complete with its original padlock and key, a waist restraint for slaves. Branding was not uncommon, so here you see a W, which would have probably been the last name of the owner of the slave or the name of the plantation. And this dates from the first quarter of the 19th century. It's a pair of branding irons. You also see an African chief's fly swat. That was from the mid-19th century, an artifact from Africa, from the place where the slaves were obtained. You see the horrible shackles that slaves would have been transported and locked in. And you see some other objects that slaves would have used. Here we have a carved and pressed horn spoon, the typical slave eating utensil dating to around 1820, and that was from the island of Nevis, but they're very similar to what they would have had in the Bahamas. You see a recreation of a local store, and you see a lot of memorabilia from the Duke and Duchess of Windsor's time here in the Bahamas. Definitely a worthwhile stop. I hope they get the air conditioning fixed. Next, let's take a look at the Grey Cliff Chocolate Company. It's actually one of the top tourist attractions and tours if you come into Nassau, especially on one of the cruise ships. So it's right next to the Grey Cliff Hotel, and it offers tours where you can see the chocolate making process. And of course, you can have some delicious samples, and you can buy some to take home. It's a sweet stop on a tour through Nassau. Next door is the St. Francis Xavier Cathedral in Nassau, Bahamas, and it was built in 1885. Notice that this is significantly later than the Protestant churches. It's the oldest Roman Catholic church in the Bahamas, and it serves as the mother church of the Archdiocese of Nassau. The cathedral's beautiful architecture and rich history make it a significant religious and cultural landmark in the city. And so now we've seen quite a few churches. I want to talk a second about the religious makeup of the Bahamas. So it's mostly Christian, of course, but Christianity is divided into different denominations. Not most, but the largest percentage, 35% of Bahamians are Baptists. The next largest group are the Anglicans. So you saw that beautiful Anglican Cathedral. When the British founded it, the British would have been Anglican. So around 15% of Bahamians today are Anglican. Right below that, 14% are Roman Catholics. Not knowing a ton of the history of Nassau and the Bahamas, I'm guessing by the date of that St. Francis Xavier Church that the Catholics came later, in later immigrant waves. The British at the time of colonization probably would not have been Catholic. Pentecostals make up 8%, Seventh-day Adventists 5%, and Methodists 4%. There's less than 1% of every other denomination and every other group, although there are a few members of the Bahamian community that would practice religions such as Islam or Judaism. It's less than 1% each. The racial makeup of the Bahamas is mostly African, of African descent, which is approximately 90% of the population. This group consists of descendants of African slaves brought to the Bahamas during the colonial period. The European descent people in the Bahamas is around 5%, and it primarily includes descendants of British settlers and immigrants from other parts of Europe, and with less than the other 5% being different mixed ethnic groups from all over the world. Next, let's move on to another one of the most famous sites and stops in Nassau, and it is called John Watling's Distillery. Really popular site, you can imagine why. They offer a fascinating tour of the rum making process. It's set in a historic estate. They have a lot of beautiful pictures as well about the history of the Bahamas. But I think most people go here for the delicious premium rums, where you can taste, sample. The people were extremely friendly. I'm blown away. I feel like the hospitality training in the Bahamas is just so beyond anything I've ever experienced. You feel just welcomed with open arms. And you can definitely buy some of the delicious rum, if you're a rum drinker, here at John Watling's Distillery. Hi, good, thank you. Yeah, that's great, thank you. Oh, that's it? Okay. Well, they gave me a free little sample of pina colada. I'm not a big drinker. I don't like rum. Only my friend Amy knows why I don't like rum. But actually, I couldn't taste it. I couldn't taste the rum, the alcohol. I just tasted the delicious pina colada. It was actually really, really, really good. So if you guys like rum, I would probably go back there, because that John Watling's rum looks like the real deal. So yeah, you can do tours, you can have samples, you can see where it's made. I think it's pretty cool if you're into that thing. If you're into that kind of thing. Next, I walked back into town, and there is quite a nice beach actually in downtown Bahamas. Now, you're going to see in one of my future videos that the most spectacular beaches, there are some wonderful ones on this same island, but they're kind of a day trip from Nassau. You have to have a car or some other way of getting there. But this particular beach is right in town, and it's very popular with locals and tourists alike, but locals love it. It's called Junkanoo Beach, a popular spot for everybody, known for clear waters and a very vibrant atmosphere. A great place to relax and enjoy the Bahamian sun without having to trek far outside the city. If you come to Nassau, the must-try food is the fish fry. And there's many places where you can get fish fry, but there's one specific area kind of on the main road that starts to head out of town. Okay, so some comments so far about the Bahamas. Very, very, very friendly people, actually, so far. More friendly than I thought they were going to be honest. I mean, usually when I travel, I find most countries, especially in the Americas and Latin Americas, to be really friendly people, but I've had situations like in New York where I found West Indian people to be really direct and sometimes come across as rude even though they don't mean it. I haven't really found that to be the case here. I feel like people are going out of their way to be friendly. Definitely in all the places that I went. Museums, the restaurants, which is actually kind of the opposite. Like in Europe, a lot of times in the museums and the restaurants, they're super rude, and it's the people on the street that you meet that are really nice. Here, everyone's pretty nice. So very friendly people, some really cute guys, that's for sure. Not a cheap destination. I just spent $30 for a fish fry. Where I'm from, a small town in northern Michigan, my God, I think a fish fry still can't be more than $10. And it probably was $4 back then. So I can't believe I paid $30 for a fish fry. It was like a piece of fish, a little fish, a snapper, not a piece, it was a snapper, and then a little bit of rice and beans, which they call rice and peas here, tiny little piece of macaroni and cheese, and some coleslaw. The coleslaw was actually tasty. The fish tasted fine. It's just like, I can't believe it cost $30. So I spent $30 for dinner, and it was basically almost like a fast food quality dinner. I'm not knocking the dinner at Fish Fry. I'm really not. It was fine. It's fine for a fish fry. It's just that the price is high for, you know, a non-fine dining experience. $30 for dinner. I paid, that's with everything, including tip, 25 some for lunch. So don't come here looking for discounts. This ain't Mexico. But there's no seaweed, so the beaches are beautiful, and I'm going to see more of them tomorrow. After that, I had the privilege of being taken by one of my hosts to a more local neighborhood. And of course, this neighborhood is on the other side of that Gregory's Arch that we saw earlier. Here, I got to see a well that residents still sometimes get water from, but definitely did in years past, up until recent times. I also see a pink preschool that my host actually went to. It adds a splash of color to the surroundings. So I like this part of the tour because it highlights everyday life in Nassau and the contrast between tourist areas and local communities. The Queen's Staircase, also known as 66 Steps, was carved out of solid limestone by slaves in the 18th century. It leads up to Fort Fincastle and offers dramatic historical views. It's really one of my favorite places in Nassau. It's very Instagrammable, but even if you're not into that, it's just a wonderful, peaceful, tropical, historical place to get a little bit of exercise. I saw local joggers there and tourists alike, and a reminder of the complex and beautiful history of the Bahamas. Oh, man. I mean, I hate flying and I hate airports so much, but I love travel and I love learning about new cultures and I love learning about new countries and I love digging into the history and seeing and understanding and feeling what it means, what it says about who we are and who we were and who we might be. So I'm really happy right now. I got an amazing Airbnb host named Leon, and he drove me up to get a last glimpse because I didn't have enough time to see everything I wanted to see in Nassau. There's so much to see on Nassau Island. That's what they call it, by the way. Hardly anyone ever calls it what it really is New Providence Island, I guess. Everyone just calls it Nassau Island. So anyway, here I am at Fort Fincastle. It's later in the day, so it's not open for me to go inside, but it looks really nice from the outside. Of course, that was the Queen's Stairway, also looks awesome. I'm actually happy to be here at night because it's so hot during the day in May. So let's just try to get a little bit of a look at this historic fort. Oh, there's 5. Oh, the fine forts of Nassau. Fort Charlotte, Fort Montague, Winton Battery, Potter's Cay Battery, Old Fort Battery, Hog Island Battery. Fort Charlotte, built in 1789. Fort Montague, the oldest fortification still standing, built in 1742. So I think this one was after that. Oh, wow. You can see beautiful Atlantis from here. Look at that. It's more beautiful in real life, but like, that's Atlantis. One of the locals thought that it looked a little dated because I guess Atlantis has been around for a while. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was just a gorgeous, gorgeous resort, and I'm not even a resort guy. I think it's really nice. There's Atlantis in the background. So you can tell that this Fort Fincastle that I'm at obviously had a very, very prominent overlook so that you could see everything. And then there's a couple trees here, but I'm sure they were cut down when this was meant to be a fort location. And you would have been able to see everything. You would have been able to see anyone approaching. That's Paradise Island over there, but you would have gotten like a 360 of who's coming to the island, what their ship looked like and why. What are they doing here? So let's see. I think this is the closest we can get to the fort itself. See a nice cannon up there. Yeah, I would say there's a ton of stuff to do in Nassau, Bahamas. A lot of it a lot of the different places can be done in like an hour each, but there's like 6 or 7 places that you'd want to go. So for me, I would want a whole day of just downtown Nassau, seeing all the different museums, the distillery, the cigar company, how they make their rum, like all that kind of stuff. I would want a whole day to see that and have time to eat and get out of the heat sometimes. So this describes Fort Fincastle, where we're at right now. One of several forts and batteries built on New Providence. It was built between 1697 and 1798, so over 100 years. Frequent threats from Spain, France, and America, because remember, the Loyalists moved to Bahamas after the Revolutionary War. Legions of pirates and marauders. Keeping a watch over the town and harbor was paramount, according to this guide. So, let's see how thick this baby is. Oh yeah. Stick your hand in there. Woo. I love, one of my favorite things in life, by far one of my favorite things, is going to historical sites with either a really good guide or somehow getting it to myself. So I know I can't go in right now. I really want to go in. I don't think I'll have time tomorrow. So I guess you got to come between 9 to 5 to do that. But I still love just being here by myself. I love it. I love transporting myself back in time in my head. I don't know why. I just love the idea that, you know, even my own life and time goes by so quickly that it's just a snap of a finger and you're in an era where everything is different. The values were completely different. The thoughts that you would have when you wake up in the morning and the feelings that are associated with those thoughts would have all been different. It's just, we don't even have the same brain that we did 200 years ago in some ways. So I think that's one of the things that just fascinates me so much about history, which is our story. The story of our parents, grandparents, ancestors. This is a cool shot. Like, look, see it back there. Look at that. It's a really cool view of this fort. There are 3 forts in Nassau, Bahamas, which actually makes it a pretty cool destination for history lovers. The first one is that beautiful fort atop of the Queen's Staircase. It's called Fort Fincastle. It was built in 1793 by Lord Dunmore, the then governor of the Bahamas. It's situated atop what's called Bennett's Hill, and it's the highest point in Nassau, providing strategic advantage for defense and surveillance. It was mainly designed to protect the island from potential invaders and pirates. Its unique shape, resembling a paddle wheel steamer, made it difficult for cannonballs to penetrate. This architectural feature sets it apart from the other forts in the Bahamas. Fort Charlotte is constructed in the late 18th century by British colonial forces. It's located a little bit west of downtown Nassau, and it overlooks the harbor and offers a commanding view of the incoming ships. It was originally built to defend this western approach to the city. It's known for its extensive underground passageways, which were used for storage and defensive maneuvers, and it is the largest fort in the Bahamas. Towards the evening, one of my wonderful hosts took me to Fort Montague. Fort Montague was built in 1741 by British colonial forces, and it's positioned near the entrance to Nassau's harbor. It's lower than the other forts, and it's protecting it from attacks by sea. It was originally constructed to defend Nassau from Spanish invasions, because that was the threat at the time that it was built. Unlike Fort Fincastle and Fort Charlotte, Fort Montague is a smaller fort with a very straightforward design, but it's also known for its picturesque setting near a beautiful beach, making it a popular historical attraction today. We also went for a party on a pirate ship, and I recommend this if that's your type of thing. Experience the thrill of Nassau's pirate history with a party on one of these ships. It's a themed cruise, and it offers a fun and immersive way to learn about the island's swashbuckling past. So right behind me is the Pompey Slave Museum, or Museum of Slavery, that actually supposedly takes place in what used to be the house where they would sell the slaves. And it's interesting, I'm glad I came here and took a picture of it, because it just reminds us of how prominent this institution was, because I'm in the middle of downtown, right? So I'm not like on the outskirts somewhere, you know. I'm literally in the nicest part of town, surrounded by all these beautiful buildings, and right here would have been like, just like I'm shopping on a Sunday, the square and the building where the slaves were sold from. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go inside the museum today. I got a flight to catch, but I've heard it's good and I'd love to check it out next time. Somehow I made it.
Whenever you guys get hungry, yes sir. Whenever you guys get hungry, want to eat some local Bahamian food, I'm the guy to see.
Okay.
I serve local Bahamian food. My food is not injected with steroids.
Sounds good.
What do you want to eat up here today?
If I wasn't flying in 5 minutes. Oh, cool. We'll have more time for this next time. So one thing I couldn't squeeze in. How much is it for admission?
$5.50 for this floor and $11 for the upper floor.
What's the difference between the floors?
This deals with the story of the Bahamas and slavery in general, and upstairs is the Lukai and Indian exhibit.
Oh, Lukai and Indian. Where were the slaves actually sold? Was it in the building or in the courtyard? Inside the building. Wow. Okay. Thank you for telling me. I'm going to come back.
Okay.
So here I am standing right here where the slaves were actually sold. This is a first also for me. I've never actually been in a room where they were auctioned, and I bet you that, would you say that stone is probably original, don't you think, Leon?
It's really good.
Yeah, I bet you the stone is the original stone. Obviously this has all been repainted and stuff, but it's very well air conditioned and nice, and I would definitely come back if I had more time. It's a great idea to put the slave museum inside a place where slaves were auctioned. It makes it really impactful and very unique too. I'm glad I'm walking out of this door, not a slave. The Lynden Pindling International Airport is the main gateway to the Bahamas, and it's named after the first Prime Minister of the Bahamas. It's actually a beautiful, nicely air-conditioned, spacious airport with modern facilities and a very welcoming atmosphere. As we conclude your free tour of the historic downtown of Nassau, reflect on the history and the beauty of the Bahamas and the Atlantic Ocean from the plane, appreciating everything from a bird's eye view, just like I did as I took off. Let your eyes be mesmerized and your soul be deepened and intrigued by the history of the Bahamas. Don't forget how much it helps my channel if you like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know which site was your favorite and which one that I might have missed. I can't wait to hear from you and see you next week as we head to the best beaches in the Bahamas.